The air in the military base visitor center was thick with the low hum of conversation, a stark contrast to the sharp snickers and whispered derision that began to cut through it. Like wind brushing over dead leaves, the laughter started softly, then grew, a hiss of contempt aimed at a lone figure. She sat quietly, a woman consumed by her own stillness, her hands resting in her lap, fingers tightly curled around the hem of a worn, faded green jacket. It hung off her shoulders like a ghost of itself, tattered, out of place, and unmistakably old in a room filled with polished uniforms and the vibrant energy of new recruits. One teenage soldier, his uniform pristine and his confidence brimming, leaned towards another, his voice carrying just enough to reach her. "Looks like she stole that from a thrift shop dumpster." Their chuckles, too loud, too brazen, seemed to echo the collective judgment of the room. She remained still, a statue of quiet endurance, absorbing the dismissive glances and the unspoken agreement that she was merely an old woman, invisible, her story long over and of no consequence. Each whispered insult, each casual glance of disdain, seemed to press down on her, yet she offered no reaction, no flicker of acknowledgement, as if the very act of defiance would drain the last remnants of a strength that had already been tested beyond measure. The weight of their contempt settled upon her, heavy and cold, but within her, something remained unbroken, a silent testament to a past they could never comprehend. Just as the recruits' snickers reached their crescendo, a ripple of quiet settled over the room, an almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere. Across the space, a decorated general, his stride authoritative and his bearing commanding, paused mid-step. His eyes, accustomed to scanning battlefields and dissecting complex strategies, suddenly locked onto the back of the old jacket. A sharp intake of breath, barely audible, escaped him, and in that split second, the entire room seemed to freeze, the casual derision replaced by an unacknowledged tension. Denton, still basking in his petty triumph, continued to smirk, but his words caught in his throat as the general's presence became a palpable force. The general's gaze remained fixed, not on the woman, but on the patch on her sleeve, a circular emblem, its falcon mid-dive, clutching lightning, the cryptic letters OSR dulled by age beneath it. "Where did you get that?" His voice, usually a bark that could cut through gunfire, was different now, not angry, but imbued with an almost reverent quietness that commanded immediate silence. Denton, confused, stammered, "What, sir?" The general's eyes, however, never left the jacket, his question repeating, sharper this time, "That patch." The room fell into an absolute hush, the recruit's former bravado dissolving into uneasy glances. Slowly, as if drawn from a deep shadow, Elise raised her head. Her eyes, clouded by time but unyielding, met the general's. He took a hesitant step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, filled with a disbelief that bordered on or, "You were OSR." She nodded once, a single, decisive movement. Just once. The general, a man whose name was a legend on the base, who had barked orders through the chaos of war zones and flown into the heart of danger, took a distinct step back. His eyes, usually sharp and penetrating, seemed to cloud with a distant memory. "Everyone out," he commanded, his voice holding no room for debate, not to her, but to the now scattering recruits. Denton, his face pale, stammered a half-hearted "but sir," before quickly retreating, the waiting room emptying in seconds, leaving Elise undisturbed in her seat. The general approached her slowly, deliberately, like a man walking towards a ghost he never expected to find. "They told us you didn't make it out," he said, his voice a low, almost mournful tone. "That the whole OSR unit was lost in 79. Elise spoke then, her voice soft, like smoke from a dying fire, the first words anyone there had ever heard her utter. "We weren't lost. We were buried." He sat down beside her, not as a superior officer, but as a fellow soldier before a monument. "Operation Silent Raptor," he murmured, almost to himself, the words laden with history. "Covert intel. Deep infiltration. You were the only woman in the unit, weren't you?" Elise's fingers gently tapped the faded patch, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "I made them promise to keep it that way," she told him quietly. And then, slowly, deliberately, she began to speak of what she hadn't spoken of in decades. The story of how she had been inserted into enemy territory without backup, how she had delivered the classified coordinates that ended a brutal siege, how she was captured, presumed dead, and traded after 14 months in a brutal camp. And how, after all of it, her name was wiped from record for national security. The jacket, with its faded patch, was all that remained, a silent testament to a life deliberately erased. The general listened, tears silently pooling in eyes hardened by war, understanding finally etched on his face. "Why didn't you come forward?" the general finally asked, his voice thick with emotion, the weight of her sacrifice pressing down on him. Elise smiled faintly, a ghost of a smile that held decades of resignation. "I did," she said, her voice still soft, almost a whisper. "No one listened. Eventually, I stopped trying." He stood then, snapping into a rigid attention, and saluted her, not out of duty, but out of a profound debt that transcended rank and time. "You were a ghost in our files," he declared, his voice firm, "but you're a giant in our history." The next Saturday, Elise returned to the base, but this time, the air was different. There was no laughter, no smirks, only a profound silence that spoke volumes. Waiting at the visitor center door was a line of recruits, standing tall in full uniform, their faces etched with a mixture of solemnity and anticipation. At the center of them stood Denton, his youthful arrogance replaced by a palpable humility. His hands, which had so confidently mocked her just a week prior, now trembled slightly as he held a bouquet of flowers and a neatly folded American flag. "We didn't know," he said, his voice barely a whisper, filled with genuine contrition. "We're sorry." Behind them, on the wall where she had once been an invisible presence, a framed photograph of her younger self had been mounted. The plaque beneath it read, "Elise Rowan, Operation Silent Raptor. Service without recognition, valor beyond record." She looked at the photograph, then back at the recruits, her gaze lingering on Denton. Her smile, though quiet, was undeniably real, a warmth spreading across her face that hadn't been seen in years. It was a smile that acknowledged not just their apology, but the profound shift in perception, the quiet restoration of her truth. Some heroes, the unseen ones, don't wear medals. They carry their stories in the faded stitches of a jacket, in the scars of a forgotten past. Elise, the silent giant, had finally been seen, her quiet courage resonating through the very institution that had once overlooked her, a testament to honor, humility, and the enduring power of a story finally remembered.